Shelby.
Hi, I'm Ella.
Hi, Nikki.
Hi, Nikki. I'm Eric.
This is my family. Okay. Thank you for coming. Suicide is the second leading cause of death in ages 10 to 34, according to the CDC of last year. You may think the people who choose to commit suicide went through more than you did, or harder things than you did, or that they are weaker than you are, but it's often not true. There aren't any documented humans who haven't experienced any trauma. How you process the traumas you end up with are often the defining factor of your future and your fate. You are not meant to process these things alone. Attempting to process these things alone puts you closer to being a statistic than you may realize. I was 14, standing alone at a gas station waiting for the police to pick me up. I had called the non-emergency number for my county because I was considered a runaway from the state. I hadn't committed any crimes. I was just a girl who ended up in foster care with no family trying to get her out, and I wanted to be anywhere other than a state-sanctioned group home where mysterious smells came from every room and nothing ever felt warm. Shockingly, the police never came, and what followed was the longest and hardest 5 years of my life. Multiple types of violences, crimes committed, and many relationships later, I needed help with the effects these events had on me and my mind. I had been forced into many types of therapies in the past, and it was rarely successful in creating long-lasting progress. But there came a point where I no longer could handle my thoughts and stresses alone. I knew talk therapy was not good for me, but it wasn't all that was good for me, but it wasn't all that I needed. So I allowed myself to become vulnerable, and I asked more questions to those willing to answer them in the field of mental health. I became more honest about what I was thinking and experiencing, and found that my style of healing was out there. I just had to make myself available to the idea of options. Therapy can be beneficial to all, and there are many forms of therapy that don't just involve speaking. Most people have a reason to seek mental health treatment, and being vulnerable actually makes you a stronger person. There are ways we as a country can make therapy more accessible to all for a better community and future. So why are people averse to therapy? What kind of therapy is out there other than traditional talk therapy, and how can it become more accessible? There's a stigma around therapy due to bad practices in the past. When most people think of therapy, they think of traditional talk therapy. This has been the most common form of therapy for hundreds of years, before therapists even existed. There have even been references to healing through words appearing in Greek and Egyptian writing, and the word counseling made its way into a book in 1363, Geoffrey Chaucer's The Wife of Bath's Tale, according to Jessica Weinberg's findings in her 2022 article speaking about the history of psychotherapy. In the past, therapy has been understudied and mismanaged. Talk therapy can be beneficial and has evolved to be a safer and more progressive environment over the years, but this isn't the only option and is often unattractive to people who are self-aware or who don't talk about their feelings often, which is not at fault of their own due to the environment we as a community have fostered in regards to feelings in the past. Therapists have used unconventional and unproductive strategies or practices in the past that have had a lasting impression on the general public, causing unease with the idea of therapy. You are validated for not feeling comfortable with the idea of therapy, but a lot of progress has been made drastically over the years. What needs to follow is accessibility and affordability of treatment and services. Most people only think of talk therapy when they imagine therapy. Therapy has a stigma for many reasons, including bad practices and often being regarded as monotonous or unproductive. If you feel this way, you are likely more self-aware than others and can benefit from the different forms of therapy that have developed over the years. EMDR therapy is a simulation therapy that mimics the way your brain processes events and information when you go to sleep. Just to make sure the camera can see it. Have you heard the term "just sleep on it" when a difficult decision has to be made? This is because when you get a genuine night of REM sleep, which isn't often for many adults with high stress, your brain processes events and occurrences from that day and decides how to compartmentalize and process them. There's also somatic therapy, which is a form of body-centered therapy. Using things like titration, which guides people with a traumatic memory and pinpoints where your body has felt the trauma. Pendulation can guide you from a relaxed state to emotions similar to when a trauma occurred, allowing you to reattempt processing them and then return to a relaxed state again, all within a controlled and safe environment, according to Harvard University as of 2022. Mental health studies in the past have been questionable, and many people are uninformed. Mental health treatments in the past and throughout time have been questionable due to implementations and understudied practices and underfunded resources. In the past, a lot of treatments designed sounded great in theory, but in action were less effective and practical. Things like lobotomies, conversion therapies, inhumane inpatient centers, and therapists who use the style of shaming or blaming are things we as a country have encountered through the journey of receiving mental health treatment. And these things are often portrayed in the media for entertainment. As a result, many people associate mental health services with extreme levels of unwanted change or even danger. Mental health services, most importantly, are not readily available for all. Medicaid and Medicare recipients receive mental health services, but outside of this, Americans are left to their own devices when seeking mental health. As of 2022, 26 million people went uninsured in the US, shared by the Peter G. Peterson Foundation. Insurance needs to be more acceptable. And even with insurance, copays for mental health services are unreasonable. According to Forbes Health, the average cost of psychotherapy in the US ranges from $100 to $200 per session. Of course, there are currently resources for low-income citizens and organizations that assist for paying with mental health treatments, but most people who are at low points do not have it in them to seek out and endure the process that involves enacting these things. So what are the causes? It is difficult to find funding for mental health. Of course, there are currently resources for what is happening? The process of finding a good therapist or style that works for you, on top of jumping through the hoops of finding affordable assistance, makes the public feel overwhelmed and stuck. Many people just think their problems aren't good enough, and I am here to tell you that what you have experienced and the pain you are going through is more than enough of a reason to jump through the hoops and seek treatment. Everyone experiences events that impacts them or changes their life in some way, and you are not meant to process these things alone. You may be thinking of a specific event that makes you cringe internally or externally, but you think others have gotten through worse. You don't actually know how well those others have gotten through. It's possible they weren't making it through at all. How do we take the first steps to fixing our mental health? Find out your options. If you're insured, contact your insurance company and let them know you're interested in mental health services. If finances are tight, many insurance companies have access to programs, organizations, and resources that can assist with the cost of finding mental health services while partnering with your insurance. If you are uninsured, free clinics, group therapies, and seeking out qualifying for Medicaid and university services are all resources that can assist in times of crisis or just sorting out your thoughts. Unfortunately, the right kind of therapy isn't always available when you are low income. This solution involves action in different ways. We as a collective need to start fighting for change. Become familiar with your local legislators and representatives. These positions often rely on being voted on to stay in their positions and respond to collective calls for change. As a collective, we can call for more allocated funds dedicated to furthering access to mental health services, like better quality free clinics and fair pay to therapists willing to work at these centers. Think about what you need and voice your opinions. Today we've discussed why therapy can be beneficial and valuable to anyone. I hope you've been able to validate and pinpoint the eerie feeling you have when you haven't been able to describe when thinking of therapy. And hopefully you've recognized that your experiences and mental health struggles are worth the work and are never small enough of a problem. If you are like me and want to see change in the availability of therapy, be sure to call for change in the ways you can. Therapy is for all, and while everyone has a reason to go, it should be more accessible and the stigma needs to end. Like Wayne Dyer said, how people treat you is their karma. How you react is yours. What better karma is there than to fix your life and feel better? Does anyone have any questions?